Hello everyone and welcome back to the Common Sense Crypto channel. As with you always, this is Rich doing another video today on XRP. So I hope you're all having a wonderful day today wherever you are in this great world. We're gonna talk about XRP. And I gotta start with this from Mr. Man. Bank of England presses on with retail CBDC. Remember, originally they were going to have a wholesale CBDC, but now they're saying that the banks are dragging their feet, so the retail CBDC is the path forward. But we heard the same thing from the BIS. Remember, the BIS said that SWIFT is not keeping up with innovation and that they're still going to push ahead with or without SWIFT. I think we're going to see the same thing here. Boom, Bank of England has already integrated the Ripple technology with 2 simulated RTGS systems. And one thing to point out here is that they're talking about interledger protocol. So the Ripple solution utilized by the bank was built around the open source interledger protocol that enables payments to be made across different ledgers and networks across the world. A ledger is essentially a file used to record transactions measured in terms of a monetary unit of account. So we know Ripple is at the heart of the UK CBDC. Then they go on to talk about leveling the playing field. In a research paper, in written evidence submitted by Ripple Labs, submitted to the UK Parliament, Ripple claims that in the UK, there remains 1.2 million unbanked people who are unable to access the full range of basic financial services, such as savings, loans, mortgages, and other forms of credit. They face similar difficulties in establishing credit history, accessing peer-to-peer lending, and being able to send cross-border payments in an efficient and effective manner. Digital assets, including CBDC, should the UK decide to launch one, will assist in each of these 3 areas. Remember, like I said multiple times, they're not going to push ahead without everyone having access to a bank account. They're not going to leave anyone behind. They're going to level the playing field. This is also Ripple's vision to build out the Internet of Value, where value flows over the internet as easily, freely, and cheaply as information does today. So they're saying that CBDC can help level the playing field as well. I'm just not a fan of CBDC. I still think that they are going to use it to freeze people's money. It's also going to be programmable money. If you don't use it, it's going to expire over time. No more saving for a rainy day. Hong Kong taps Brazil and Thailand for cross-border tokenization trials. And this makes sense as well, because tokenization is the path forward. The development comes as the crypto industry progressively matures to integrate with existing financial plumbing. With 21.co estimated the global market value for tokenized assets to top $10 trillion in the bull case scenario and $3.5 trillion in the bear case by 2030. They're also talking about carbon credits here as well. So in a press release on October 28th, the HMKA said in partnership with Banco Central do Brazil will integrate the 2 institutions' experimental central bank digital currency infrastructures to test cross-border payments versus PVP and delivery versus payment, settlement use cases in trade finance and carbon credits. You know, once carbon credits become a very big market, that's going to kill Bitcoin. Because if you want to mine Bitcoin, you're going to have to buy carbon credits and carbon offsets. And then on top of that, whenever you transact in Bitcoin, you're also going to have carbon credits to cover that carbon-based transaction. Because we know that Bitcoin takes a ton of energy. And that's going to be a major problem for Bitcoin going forward. And I addressed that in multiple videos, and I don't think people really understand the impact of this. And when they say 10 trillion bull case scenario by 2030, the World Economic Forum says the tokenization market's going to be $867 trillion by then. So they're expecting this to pick up a lot of momentum long before 2030. But once again, this could also be why this summit is taking place and why Ripple is going to be there. Ripple is excited to return to Hong Kong on October 30th to host this year's Hong Kong Policy Summit. We will be bringing together policymakers, regulators, and industry leaders to explore one of the key topics with the rapidly evolving digital asset space, potential regulatory frameworks for digital asset custody. But I'm sure they're also going to talk about tokenization. Ripple's going to be involved in that as well. State Street bond market tokenization to reach mass adoption within 12 months. This is a bold projection from one of the world's leading asset managers, overseeing $4 trillion in assets. In its October 2024 report on asset tokenization and capital markets, State Street lays out a timeline for how tokenization is set to reshape various asset classes, taking into account factors like product type and trading processes. When Wall Street makes a call like this, it's worth paying attention. And again, they're looking at trillions of dollars already over the course of the next 12 months. Digital bonds are going to dominate use case of tokenization, $314 trillion. Then you look at real estate, $337 trillion, investment funds, $155 trillion, public equity, $123 trillion. So when they're talking about 10 trillion by 2030, most likely we are going to see it in the hundreds of trillions way before then. And that's why I'm always telling you, you could sit on the sidelines like some people and wait for 2030 to happen, or you could get in early and make a shit ton of money off of this as it happens in real time. The one thing I still don't get is you see here, real estate, leading hotel chain. They say key benefits, increased accessibility and transparency trading through registered system blueprint for future real estate tokenization. Our tokenization platform, smart certificates, can be fragmented without prejudice to the property's real value. Once fragmented, they grant each owner a digital copy and a unique key, ensuring that each owner receives their dividends automatically. So now if you're investing in a tokenized hotel chain, I could see that bringing income monthly by people staying at those hotels. But what about private property? When they keep talking about tokenizing private property, first of all, how do you gain back that ownership of your property? Would you then have to buy 100% of the tokens associated with your house? In other words, you would be buying your house over again if your house is paid off. And how would those people gain money off of your house on a monthly basis? Would they make you pay rent for a house that you already own? That's the one thing I'm worried about with tokenization, because they plan to tokenize every single thing around you. And how would they get the house from you? Well, when you look at the debt clock, we are all in debt. We share the US debt. So they could use that debt against you in the future. That's how they can gain ownership of your house. I talked about that a little bit in previous videos. Tapping into global pools of liquidity, tokenization of real-world assets continues to be the main driver for adoption of distributed ledger technology. We expect the most prominent frontrunners to will include cash and deposits, bonds, and ETNs. Bringing these assets on chain will provide funding from global sources of liquidity. Now, when they say tapping into global pools of capital, this is where I could see XRP sitting as that on-demand liquidity provider. So this way, people could just tap into that liquidity whenever that liquidity is needed. This all points at Ripple is what I'm saying. Watching B2C2, an SPI property that Ripple will launch RLUSD on, is expanding client ability to send receive crypto with OpenPaid in Turkey. Again, rail after rail getting put in place for XRP to run on. And you know, all of this runs on that RippleNet technology. It's getting embedded into every single payment rail around the world. If it's not through Ripple directly, it's through a partner of Ripple. And yet people still think somehow the price of XRP is going to be sitting where it's at right now. But when is this all going to come together? Well, here's a clip of the IMF. And take notice to what he says at the end. This reminded me of when Digital Asset Buy said he was once told that XRP was designed to prevent World War III. This is William C. Dudley, the chair of Bretton Woods Committee, talking. Take a listen.
A little bit, but I want to ask you about sort of another important multilateral institution that we've referenced here today, the BIS and the FSB. What is your view on how effective those institutions are and how fit for purpose those two institutions are in sort of meeting these modern global challenges?
So I think both the BIS and the FSB have done a really good job when a problem has been identified, that the G20 says this is a problem and we want you to fix it. And then they have the mandate to go forward and fix it, and they have a lot of support. So the examples I used before, the transition of LIBOR to secured overnight funding rate and other, repo rates in other countries, the central clearing of overseas derivatives. But it's harder when it's a perspective issue, because, as I said earlier, the BIS and the FSB can only do things by consensus. They don't. It's not. They're not. They don't have quite the same governance model as the IMF and the World Bank, and so it's harder to get things done in a perspective. It's sort of like it's the army of volunteers. It's the army of the willing. A good example of this is what's happening in terms of cross-border payments. The BIS is basically saying, who has an instant payment system that would like to knit your instant payment system together with other countries' instant payment? And the countries that put their hands up, the BIS says, let's go, and they take it forward. And they're hoping that demonstration project, Project Nexus, which is India, Thailand, Singapore, a couple other countries, Malaysia, they're hoping that if they can do that successfully, then they'll encourage other people to come on board because they'll see the benefits of that action. But it's hard to do under the existing governance framework because it's all about consensus, and that's harder to achieve in peacetime than in wartime.
Take notice to what he just said. He said it's harder to do this in peacetime than it is in wartime. So under the cover of war, they're going to connect this entire system together. Even in Ukraine, if you see what's going on, it's a testing ground for a cashless society, digital ID, and so on. Because inside of all that chaos, they're building out a digital framework. And they're going to tie everyone in that country to that framework. And the U.S. is going to sit there and they're going to watch how everything unfolds before they do it here in the United States. And I think the same thing is going on in other countries as well. Plus, war also keeps everyone distracted. It fills the mainstream media news, and people sit there and they're like, oh, taking sides and getting pissed off. And at the same time, as they're being distracted by this, a digital financial system is building in the background. And I think we're getting very close to it now. The BIS seems to have not slowed down at all. They're just connecting everyone together. And they're going to continue to do that. And then one day we're going to wake up and XRP is going to be sitting at a very high price. And we're all going to be wondering why. And it's because they already have a set price for XRP. that they're going to need for it to be utilized all around the world. But until it happens, you got to stay patient, stay positive, and let's get rich together. With that said, I'm going to wrap up this video. I want to thank you all for watching. I appreciate all of you. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great night.